Hello guys, welcome to our new movie recap channel. I've got a surprise for you waiting at the end of this video. Our movie kicks off with a lady named Flory calling her son Dito and telling him how she can't believe she's finally hearing his voice after being worried sick about him, even to the point where she had to call his buddy Nerf just to get him to reach out. She lets him know that his dad is in really bad shape and is refusing to go to the hospital, leaving her completely at a loss for what to do. She starts praising his friend Nerf and explains that Nerf is going to pick him up at the airport when he lands. But then she abruptly ends the call because his dad just woke up. Jumping to 2005 in California, we see Dito in a press interview where it's clear how successful he's become as an author, particularly because of his latest book. Dito mentions that a character named Giuseppe dies at the end of the book, acknowledging that it's a total bummer and most readers won't see it coming. But then he adds that a new character will show up only to die as well. We flash back to 1986, where Dito introduces himself and explains that the movie is his life story, jumping between his teen years in the Astoria neighborhood of Queens in the 70s and his current life as a famous writer. We meet three girls, Ari, Lori, and Diane, walking down 31st Street, and they stop Dito to ask him about his taste in music, specifically if he's into rock or disco. We find out that back then, Dito and his crew, Antonio, Giuseppe, and Nerf, were headed down a dark path involving street fights and chasing girls. Even the older neighbors would give them dirty looks because of the constant trouble and chaos they were causing in the streets. Afterward, Dito and his friends go to his place, and it's clear Dito's parents really like them. Antonio tells Dito's dad, Montiel, that they're planning to join a boxing team with their sights set on the Golden Gloves. But Montiel switches the subject to work, telling them they can't just be street punks all day and need to get jobs, because if they don't learn to be self-reliant, they'll never be champions at anything. Montiel notices that their friend Giuseppe is a really quiet kid who doesn't talk or joke around, and when they leave, Giuseppe says a formal goodbye, making Montiel wonder why such a mellow kid is hanging out with Antonio and Dito. Plus, we find out Giuseppe is actually Antonio's little brother. Then we head to school, where there's a new kid named Mike who just moved from Ireland, and the teacher mentions that Mike wants to be a writer like his dad. But while Mike is reading his poem, Dito catches sight of Giuseppe walking around naked on the roof of the building next door and starts cracking up. Once the rest of the class notices, everyone starts laughing and ruins Mike's moment, so the teacher shuts it down and tells them to open their books to page 62. When school lets out, they go right back to their repetitive, boring lives. They are all just living for the moment and nothing else. Because they're so used to being wild and aggressive, Antonio gets pissed when the subway door closes before he can get in with Dito, and he curses out the driver as the train pulls away. On the train, Dito runs into the new kid Mike, and they start talking. And Dito finds out Mike used to live in Manhattan before moving to the new school. Mike mentions wanting to visit Coney Island, but Dito tells him he's never even been to the zoo and isn't interested in going at all. But back at Dito's house during a family dinner, Dito shows up super late. When they ask where he's been, he lies and says he went to the zoo because he met a guy named Mike on the subway and decided to go with him. He also tells them Mike wants to start a band and that he's going to join up with him, then complains about how hot it is in the house, which leads Antonio to tell him that summer is always hot. His Uncle George brings up the girl, Lori, the swimmer Dito is seeing, and they all start teasing him about it. Dito tries to explain she isn't even a swimmer, but nobody listens, and they just keep making him the center of the joke. In the present, Dito is in the bathroom and sees that his old friend Nerf sent him 7 messages saying his dad is really sick and he needs to come see him, adding that his mom reached out because she couldn't get a hold of him. Back in the past, Dito is out with Lori and Diane, and they get into a scrap with some Chinese guys at a fruit stand. Then later, they see 3 guys tagging Dito's house with spray paint, which turns into a fight where they trade blows and insults, leaving Dito with a mark on his face. They finally head inside and Antonio talks to them about the fight, learning they were brawling with one of the taggers, and Antonio vows to beat the guy and his crew up whenever he sees them. When they head back out, they run into Nerf, who took his mom's car for a joyride, and they jump in against his will, even though he's terrified and wants to put the car back. They stay in the car and force him to drive toward the Queensboro Bridge, where they ask about the taggers who hit Dito and are shocked when a little kid tells them one of the guys is his brother. They tell the kid to let his brother know Antonio came for him because of what happened to Dito on 31st Street, and weirdly, Antonio hits the kid just to make the older brother come looking for them. Then we see Antonio's home life, which is a mess because he's always fighting with his dad, who hits him and kicks him out. When he goes to Dito's, Montiel tries to tell him that his dad surely loves him, despite his behavior, and that he needs to understand that. The next day, Dito meets Mike to talk about a new rock song Mike wrote. Mike takes him to see a guy named Frank, who is a total eccentric, constantly looking over his shoulder, talking on the phone, and moving his dog while giving Dito and Mike orders, doing everything at once until they start laughing at him. And Frank offers them $100 a week to walk his dogs, which they accept. We find out Dito wants to focus on singing, but hanging with Frank changes things because he's older and they think he's savvy, seeing him as a role model. In the present, Nerf is waiting for Dito at the airport and is pumped to see him. They get in the car, and Nerf mentions seeing Dito's old flame Lori a couple of days ago and tells him she's a mother now. As they drive, they pass the Greek club, and Nerf asks if Dito still remembers the place. They see a disco in front of the club, and Dito mentions he's not into that scene anymore, while Nerf tells him the Young Professionals Club is full of those types now too. Nerf asks if he wants to go see his parents right away, but Dito says it's too late and he'll go tomorrow, suggesting he might stay in a hotel. Nerf laughs and tells him his mom cleaned the whole house, and he can stay in any room he wants. He tells Dito that his mom didn't really expect him to show up, but she loves him and brags to everyone about his book and success, even thinking he's friends with all the stars in California. Dito cuts him off to ask how he's been over the years, and Nerf admits things are bad and don't look like they're getting better, saying the whole neighborhood is in the same boat, going from bad to worse. Back in time, we see the first time Mike met Dito's crew on the roof, and the conversation was as mindless as you'd expect from a bunch of bored kids. They were constantly bickering and taking shots at each other until Mike got fed up with Antonio's teasing and decided to walk out. Lori got annoyed as well and decided to leave, telling Dito that if he liked that kind of environment, he should stay, but she was done. She was right, and Dito didn't have a comeback for her. Because of that blow-up, the whole group was tense, and Dito fought with Antonio too. And for a few days, everyone went their separate ways. Lori focused on her project and Dito on the band. Despite the friction, they all knew they were on a bad path, and that these fights could end up costing them their friendships for good. Dito gets home and hears loud yelling, and his mom meets him on the stairs looking totally stressed out and angry. When he asks what's up, she just ignores him and walks off. He goes up to his dad, who is clearly annoyed, but Montiel is calmer and explains they had a fight and his mom went for a walk to cool off. He asks Dito why he fought with Antonio, but Dito just brushes it off as a normal disagreement and says everything is fine. That night, Dito sees a bunch of graffiti on his house that basically threatens his life, and it's pretty obvious the Bridge kids are behind it. He goes to see Mike because he's terrified and hates being in Astoria, expressing his desire to move to California. Mike agrees it's the right move, but points out the $39 bus fare is way more money than they have. But Mike convinces him that if they go with their band, they'll actually be successful instead of staying in the dead-end life they have now. They sit there getting high while trying to figure out exactly how to make it happen. At the end of the day, Dito goes to Lori's window to try to fix things, but she's still mad at him and wants him to go away. He's there to apologize, but she's really upset because his friends Giuseppe and Antonio were incredibly disrespectful to her. He asks her to come to California with him and Mike and tells her that he loves her and wants her there. The next day, Dito and Mike are out walking dogs, while at the same time, Antonio, Giuseppe, and Nerf are at the subway station messing around and throwing water at the token clerk. Giuseppe decides to jump down onto the tracks and stand near the third rail, claiming that as long as you stand with both feet at once, you won't get shocked. Antonio yells at him to get up because he's being an idiot and the train is coming, but Giuseppe is being incredibly stubborn and reckless sitting down on the tracks and accusing Antonio of just acting like he cares. Antonio and Nerf try to tell him that this isn't a game and the train won't stop for him. As the train bears down on him, he tries to scramble out, but he's too late and the train hits him. When Dito hears the news, he rushes to see Antonio to pay his respects before his trip, where he runs into Lori. She asks why he hasn't answered her about when he's leaving for California or if his confession of love was real. He tells her it's not the time for this and leaves her to go offer his condolences to Antonio, who is clearly devastated but still calls his brother stupid and reckless for what happened. Dito snaps at him, telling him he needs to show some respect for his brother in the casket and act like a man, which leads to Antonio starting a fight at the funeral until Montiel breaks them up. In the present, Dito is walking down 31st Street, reliving his memories, and sees Lori at her window with her son, arguing with a guy named Hector. She's shocked to see Dito, and when he asks her son's name, she says it's Joey. Dito jokes that he hopes the kid doesn't turn out like Giuseppe. She says the kid will take after his dad, Yusef, and asks where Dito is staying. He explains he's at Nerf's mom's place and that he'll be around for a while to visit his father. He suggests they meet up or he could stop by, but she doesn't give a straight answer and says she has to go in and make dinner. We go back to the past when Dito tried to make peace with Antonio outside his house, but it turned into another argument that Nerf had to break up. Antonio felt like he cared more about Montiel and his life than Dito did, and it was true that Dito was totally checked out from his dad. As they walked away, the three guys from the bridge showed up for payback, not knowing it was Antonio who had hit their brother, and one of them jumped out and beat Dito mercilessly until he couldn't move. The guy threatens to kill Dito and his family next time and lets him know he knows exactly where they live before driving off. Antonio comes back and finds Dito on the ground, helps him up, and takes him inside, where his dad wakes up demanding to know what happened. Dito lies and says he fell off a wall, but it's a terrible lie, and his dad keeps pressing them until they admit the bridge thugs jumped him because Antonio hit their little brother. Lori shows up because she heard what happened and was worried, but Dito is just annoyed by her presence because he's trying to tell his dad he's leaving for California with Mike without her. He's forced to bring up the subject, and his dad tells him he's not going anywhere, saying if he's scared of the thugs, Antonio will handle it. But Dito is dead set on leaving, explaining he's sick of the neighborhood and their daily routine, and that this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance to try something new for a month. His dad loses his temper, telling Dito not to talk to him that way, and that if he wants to leave, he can, but he better never speak to him like that again. The fight escalates, especially when Lori chimes in, and Dito ends up snapping at her and throwing her out. His dad tries to stop him, but Dito screams that he hates him and is going to do what he wants, regardless of his dad's opinion. The stress is too much, and his dad collapses, leading them to call an ambulance while a panicked Dito flees the house. In the present, Dito arrives at the house and his mom hugs him after 15 years apart. He goes in to see his dad sleeping, and when he wakes up, Dito kisses him and asks how he's feeling. Montiel says he's fine, but Dito tells him he looks terrible and says he's there to take him to the hospital. Montiel throws his words back at him, pointing out that it took him 15 years to travel 3,000 miles to care about him. Dito says he didn't come for a fight, but they start rehashing their old drama like it was yesterday, and Montiel blames him for abandoning his parents for 15 years and only showing up now because he's sick, insisting he doesn't need Dito's help. Dito walks out and sits on the stairs like he did as a kid until his mom joins him, telling him he shouldn't still be holding on to this anger after all this time. She explains how much his father loves him and reminds him that they had him late in life, so much so that people used to think Montiel was his grandfather. She tells him his dad always lived for him and treated him more like a friend than a son, and that he doesn't deserve to be treated this way now. Back in the past, Mike and Dito are by the pool, talking about their California plans and how they need to scrounge up some cash to make it happen. A little later, Dito goes to apologize to Lori for how he acted at his house, and because she loves him, she forgives him. Right then, Nerf shows up to say Antonio found the guy who jumped Dito. They find the guy at a shop with his friends and wait for him to be alone. Antonio goes in with a bat and beats him down while Dito watches, finally getting his revenge. The next day, Mike and Dito go to get their money from Frank since he's 3 weeks behind on their pay. But Frank is being his usual weird self, ignoring them while listening to music and even asking them for their thoughts on the tracks. Dito finally loses his patience and tells Frank they know know the cash is in the fridge and they just want what's theirs. Frank stops the music and asks if they are trying to rob him. Mike tries to de-escalate, telling him they just want their $300. Frank gets the money from the fridge, but pulls a gun too, telling them he'll use it if they try to rob him, then says this is their last job together and tells them to never mention California to him again, ordering them to take the money and leave. They take the cash and bolt, genuinely terrified of him. But as they're walking away, a young kid suddenly appears and shoots Mike dead in the street. Afterward, we see Dito crying in the bathroom. His dad tries to talk to him, but it turns into another fight, especially when his dad suggests they go visit Antonio in jail together. Dito finally screams that Mike is dead and was shot. Despite their good intentions, the total lack of communication between Dito and his father makes everything worse, and they end up in another shouting match. In the present, Lori confronts Dito about his plan to go back to California, telling him that he basically killed his parents when he left them the first time. She tells him they spent 15 years waiting for him, and that she finally understands that pain now that she has her own son to worry about. She tells him he looks like a man, but if he wants to actually be one, he needs to step up for his parents instead of running away like a coward again. He gets angry and kicks her out too, then goes to his dad and tells him they're going to the hospital, but his dad tells him to just get out and leave them alone. Dito asks his dad if he loves him, and Montiel reminds him that the last time he saw him, he told him he loved him and just wanted him to visit Antonio because he was like family, but Dito chose to leave instead. Dito is finally hit by the weight of it all and decides to take his dad to the hospital, then goes to the prison to visit Antonio, who is locked up for all the trouble in his life, some of which Dito knows he helped cause. The moment Antonio sees him, he gives him a huge hug and tells him he's been waiting a long time for this. They sit and talk, and Dito finally apologizes for being gone all those years. And that's how the story comes to an end, so make sure you watch till the end. Alright guys, as I promised, 5 random people will win prizes from our channel. All you have to do is like, comment, and subscribe. Don't miss your chance. Winners will be announced soon.